Built on Air podcast. We are in season 24, episode 6. Today I'm going to be solo. So I've got Camille is in LA she lives in LA and she's at the airspace event that we'll be talking a little bit about today. And Ali is on a flight, also headed to LA for other reasons. So today I'm going to be just me, and we're going to do some deep dives into some more AI stuff, some follow-up on last week, a couple Easter egg hidden gems that our community has found, and then we're going to dive into Claude and using Airtable MCP within Claude. So we have a good show for you, but yeah, if anybody's watching and if you've got something to share, we could have you on. We might have some time. So we'll see how long today's show goes for you. So excited to be with you. So yeah, let's talk a little bit. I'm going to switch over to our different view here. So we'll go like this. So yeah, today is airspace event in LA. And so if you are out there, it looks like today, right now, it's about check-in time, or even a little before then. So you might be getting ready at the hotel and on your way over. And so anyways, love to hear how the event goes. So if you're out there and watch this later, then let us know how it went. It looks like they've got 2 tracks. So there's discussions, speakers, and then they are doing a build-a-thon. I didn't realize they're doing a build-a-thon out there. So we'll see who wins the build-a-thon at this LA event. And they've got their speakers, Paul, Howie, and Rachel will be the keynotes speaking on that or emceeing. So it should be a good event. Now that I see this, I'm a little envious. Maybe I should have made the trip out there. It would have been fun to see you all out there. But maybe next time I'll make that trip. So with that, wanted to follow up. Last week, if you watched last week's episode, we talked about some of the AI lab features. And one thing that we got stuck on was we couldn't figure out how to do the web prototype. So after the show, I continued with it and I figured it out. So I wanted to show how you do a web prototype in case you're interested. We weren't sure if it was there, but how it works is it is a specific type. So if we create a new one, and so you would create a custom, and then in the type in here, it's right here. So we missed that. We were looking for it in the top level. We were looking for it within here, within the catalog. We didn't see it anywhere. So anyway, so it's right in here. You create the web prototype, you give it your instructions, you can pick your model, and then the same configuration that we went through last week. So if you want to see what it looks like, this is kind of interesting. So I just had it create a landing page for Built on Air. And it actually came up with, this is kind of interesting. This view is typically for attachments, which aren't dynamic. But this one it basically is an HTML page, and it's functional, so the links work. This is a single page app. I'd be curious if it is able, I think maybe Prototype just does single page. Excuse me. But yeah, but it creates a whole working HTML page. And then I guess what you would do is you would edit attachment. You can only change. Trying to see where you would, let's see here. How do you, yeah, so I guess it's just for viewing. They don't even have a download button to download the HTML and host it somewhere else. So I guess it truly is just for kind of prototypes and visualizing. And I'm not seeing anywhere to download, which is interesting. Yeah, so prototype only. So I wanted to show that. And then, yeah, we did our others. So that's kind of interesting. The other thing I was going to show, shout out to Russ and the Built on Air community. He posted earlier today, or evening for him. If you, looks like this is a new feature. I hadn't seen it before. Maybe it's been around for a bit. But if you are using the roadmap interface layout, you now have the ability to change this icon. So in the footers, you can specify what fields you want. And then if you just click on the icon button here, you can switch the icon. And then they even have some brands and even dynamic. It looks like it has to be a certain, I wonder what column type these are available for. Let's see. Let's find a different, maybe attachments and status. I wonder. Let's see. Okay, so for a drop-down field, you can specify how do you change it? Select color. Oh, I guess it's just the color associated with the status field. So yeah, so we've got that. Let me see attachment one. So you could do an image preview. So that's kind of cool. Let's do this one. See if we can change this. No, it doesn't like lookups of images. So just attachments. So anyways, that's a cool feature. Shout out to Russ for highlighting that. So it's a cool thing that does not show up on the Airtable What's New page. So anyways, for today's show, for the majority of it, we're going to talk about MCP and what that is, give you some context on it if you're not that familiar with it, and then we're gonna showcase how it works. So we were gonna do we had a guest lined up who got sick, and so we'll get this guest in the future. So I didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare for this. So what do you do now with limited about the time? You run it through AI and see what AI comes up with. So I ran into, if you've been using the new Claude design that's now part of Claude's AI portfolio, it's only available in their web page version of Claude. It's not available in the desktop version. Anyway, so I ran it through and I said, give me a slide deck to walk through MCP and how it works with Airtable. And 10 minutes later, it came up with this. So we're going to run through this, give you a sense of how that works. And there we go. Okay. So as far as what is MCP, let me give you. So it's essentially, like it says here, a standard way for AI tools to talk to your apps. It's essentially a wrapper around anybody's API. And so how we've worked in the past is every service provider has some kind of API typically that allows for reading and writing to the database. It's very structured. It's typically documented, and there's endpoints that you have to hit. The structure is essentially like a URL, and depending on what the URL structure looks like determines what you're going to read or write. And so you kind of have to learn this language of how an API works. And with MCP, it essentially allows you to talk in native language, and the MCP converts that native request, understands the underlying API functionality, and converts your your request into the corresponding API request. So it's essentially, like it says here, a translator between natural language and the API call to, in this case, Airtable. And so it uses AI to infer what you're trying to get at and see if it can convert that to the corresponding API call. Now, the good of that is it means you don't have to learn the structure of the API and whatnot. But the downside to it is you're dependent on this translation process of the MCP. And most of the time, it's pretty obvious what you're doing, what you're asking for. But if you're not quite sure what is even available, you got to be careful. You might be asking for the wrong thing, and you might ask similar things and get a different API call each time. And so there is some advantages of, if you want a repeatable process, if every time you're writing a script or something that you want the same results every time, it might be better to skip the MCP server and understand the exact API call that you're going to make. What we're going to learn about is there might be times where it's advantageous to use the MCP server, which in Airtable's case, there are some advantages that we're going to talk about. So yeah, so it basically allows, in this case, Claude, but it works with Codex, with any other AI environment, and there's a couple of different options. So because the REST API is publicly available, anybody can really write their own wrapper around that API and make it an MCP server. And so there's multiple out there. It's funny, the ones that they show here, this is what Claude came up with. These are all user-generated, community-generated endpoints that are available and to be able to download. But it actually doesn't even showcase the one that Airtable wrote themselves, which we're going to talk about as well. So you can see how it kind of gets confusing. So Airtable has an official MCP, but then any community member could also write their own and be able to do that. So here's 3 of them that you could potentially find. What's kind of cool about MCP is everybody is kind of jumping on this approach, and it's essentially become the standard way to allow AIs to talk to any kind of infrastructure. So you can find these registries all over. This is the one that GitHub maintains. So these are all like available within GitHub publicly to communicate with different services. So, if you want to talk to your GitHub environment right here, here's another popular one that allows you to actually extract data. You can make API calls to the web, and it'll go out and search the web and bring you back the results. I've used that before. Context 7 is a very popular one for developers. It basically allows, it knows the documentation for any open source library and allows you to, if you're writing code, to communicate with that. There's the Notion one. Now, surprisingly, within here, I was like, okay, what does it have for Airtable? And it did not have any results for Airtable, which I find surprising because I'm going to show you some of the ones that are on GitHub available for Airtable, but for whatever reason, they don't show up. I don't know if this isn't just a search across GitHub. They might have to register it or whatnot. So that's kind of weird. But anyways, like I mentioned, so it's basically a wrapper around the REST API. So Airtable, one of the big advantages that Airtable has had over the years is being able to have a very robust API. It was something that made it stand out, is they actually had a great documentation. This has not changed from the very early days. I remember seeing this 8+ years ago, and it has not changed a whole lot, where every single base, it provides you the exact documentation of what is available, what the structure of every single field looks like with an example. So they, from the very early days, had a very good API documentation around how you could communicate with your base via the API, which really allowed it to get adoption, especially in the early days, people building on top of it, building around it because of this nice documentation. And so this is essentially what we're building on top of. And you can see they also have now the meta, where you can get all of the, list the records. So this is the actual API, not specific to a specific base, but kind of the general documentation. So you can kind of see in here what is available at the REST API level. Now, how in MCP, so typically, especially if you're a community member and you're writing an MCP server, you pretty much have to work with what is available here within Airtable's REST API. So all of the ones, so here's the one that's pretty popular and pretty well put together. So this is put together by a community member who actually works at Anthropic, the company behind Claude. And so this one is, I don't know if it's the official Claude one, but it's developed by a Claude employee. But it's available to the community. He hosts it under his personal account, so I don't think it's considered official Anthropic. But yeah, so how it works is, oh, actually, I guess it is. So this is the Airtable. So basically how you install these is we're going to go into our Claude environment. So I'll use the web version. And if you go into, I think they just moved it. It's in there. So if I go into settings, connectors, yeah, so now it's under customize. So if you click on that, now it's under this customize area. And you click on plus, browse connectors. And then if let's just search for Airtable within here. So this they have here as the official one by Airtable. So now let's see. Let's go back. So this is the one that is developed by Airtable. Let me see. His documentation might be. Okay. Okay, so this one's in Claude Desktop. Let me see if I can pull that up. Make sure it's visible. Yeah, so there we are. So now we're in Claude Desktop, which is different than the Claude endpoint web version. So let's see if we can see a different one here. Settings, extensions. So we're going to go to chat. I think it's now in this customize. And now do they call them connectors? Okay, so this reflects what I have configured in the web one. Let's see if we can get this to show up. Anthropic. That is not it. So I'm wondering, it's not a plugin. No. I'm wondering if, I wonder if once Airtable released their official one that they pulled out the one for there. So this one you might have to only be able to install directly because I'm not seeing it. So anyway, so that's where it kind of gets confusing because you could find multiple ones. But let's talk about the official one. So here's, let me do it back in here. So here's the official one from Airtable. And how it works is it has tools. So a tool is essentially, it doesn't necessarily have to correspond one-to-one to like an endpoint in the API, it can, but it could also be more complex. It has some logic to it. So it could do some processing power around your request that might do more. It might be more sophisticated. It might call multiple endpoints within one tool. So these tools are kind of like tasks or actions that can be performed. Now here it says that there are 12, but let's look at the documentation. So here's the Airtable documentation for it. It gives you some of the same context that we talked about. And then gives you setup instructions, how to do it. So the main thing that you have to do, some of the key differences that I'll highlight here is the Airtable MCP uses OAuth, and so you go through the OAuth process to add it, which I've already done. But it basically is the menu, and you have to pick your scopes, and then you can pick what bases it has access to, or if it has access to all the bases. So you kind of lock it down to what it can talk to, and then you do that, and then you can also do it if your AI tool supports custom headers. Yeah, so if you're using something a little bit more dynamic than the Claude desktop itself, you can use a personal access token, which I think is kind of nice. Sometimes those are easier to use. Okay, so here's what they're saying is the capabilities that corresponds to these tools here. So okay, so this is just a simple ping, create table, create field, create base, create records for table. So this basically creates new records, update record for table, update table, update field, list bases, list workspaces, list records for table. So yeah, so this is interesting. So there's some prerequisites here. If you're going to use this one, it has to first get the table schema, so it knows like the choice IDs if you're using select fields. List tables for base, so it gives you all the tables in a base. So these are meta. List pages for base. So this is the one that's interesting. So list all interfaces and their pages for a base, including page ID, names, the tables each page displays, and the visible fields on each table. Use this to discover interface pages, especially for bases where you have interface-only access. So this one is interesting because if we go to our Airtable REST API documentation, list pages is not available in the REST API. So that is something that they have exposed to their MCP server that allows AI to call that, but you cannot, at least it's not documented how to find the pages within a base. So that's one that we're going to try to see how that difference. So that's interesting. And then similarly, this one, list records for page. This list records for an interface page, supports simple pages and hierarchy pages, like 2 tiers, projects and tasks. Use this for bases where you have interface only access or when querying data through a specific interface page. Okay, so I think those are the only ones. Display records for table. Okay, this is interesting. This tool is not available by default. It is only enabled for clients that support interactive apps. If you're a developer and wants to use this, fill out a form. So what does it do? It displays an interactive widget showing record data queried from an Airtable. Do not assume, obtain these, do not attempt. Okay, so this is Gotcha. So this is if you're a tool developer and you're building like your own chat widget and you want to like embed an Airtable view of the data. That's what that is. So let's look at our Claude. So this is interesting. So we don't have all of these. So it either doesn't document them here, or something, we need to re-authenticate to get those extra tools. We're going to see what's available to us, because that's interesting, because there's more in the documentation than what's here. So maybe just this documentation is out of date, but it does not have that display, and it doesn't have the pages ones. So that's kind of interesting. Anyways, get record for page, so a single page. So this one is also similar to these, and then the rest of these are standard searching meta things. Okay, so let's give it a go. Let's make sure. Let's talk through. Yeah, and there's also skills. Skills is a little bit different than MCP. We're not going to dive into that. That's a little bit more developer centric, but you can kind of do similar things with what's called a skill in your environment. But we're going to just stick with MCP for today. Maybe in a future episode, we'll show the skills. Okay, so limitations. Rate limit. MCP server calls are subject to the standard API rate limits. So you can't make a ton of requests. So I think it's like 5 requests per second, something like that. Batch size, creating records is limited to 10 records per request. This is a killer. Having used the REST API quite a bit, this one's frustrating because it takes a long time. They don't list it on here, but I'm assuming the REST API has a limit on reading. So you can only read 100 records at a time, and then you have to paginate if you need more than 100 records. So it can take a long time to read 1,000 records. You got to make 10 requests to do that, or it will automatically do that for you in the backend, but it's essentially 100 at a time. Okay, change policy, tool names, behavior, and capabilities may change. Permission requirements, it respects. Okay, so this is really important. The MCP server respects your existing Airtable permissions. You can only access data you normally have permission to view or modify. Third-party integrations, if you're an enterprise user, they'll need to allow lists. Yeah. Okay. So this is important. So it will respect permissions. So if you don't have access to make changes to the schema, it will respect that. So, okay, any FAQ. If you have base level, you can use MCP to access the data stored. If you only have interface, then you can just use those interface ones. Okay. So yeah, MCP users are a public API under the hood and will count against any existing API rate limits. So this is where, when it says this, I believe this, which is why I think those page interface ones are somewhere available. They just haven't publicly exposed them, but if somebody wanted to find them, I'll bet they're out there. Okay, access interface right here. If you have interface only access to a page, you can use MCP to discover. So using these 3, these are hidden ones that are likely available somewhere. Additional costs, no, it does use your rate limits. And so there are tiers, depending on what tier you are, there are monthly API consumption limits as well. You can create new bases. You can list workspaces as well. Okay, let's do this. So we're now in our Claude right here. We're going to go to our chats, and we're going to create a new chat. with my Airtable. What bases are available? Okay, so now it should recognize that. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so now it's asking, it wants to, and it's even telling us, it's giving a hint here, list Airtable workspaces, and it asks for permission. So I'm going to, our options are allow once or allow always. We're just gonna allow always. And so now you see it working, it's interacting. And so I gave it, it's loading its tools. I only gave it access to, I believe, one base with the key or the authentication that I gave it. So now it listed the workspaces. Now it's going to list the bases. So that's a different tool call. So that's why it's asking for permission to call that tool. And let's see what it does. Okay, 3 bases. Okay, it looks like I gave it access to, gave it to my finance one. We're not going to go into that one. Okay. This is not the key that I thought I wanted it to. So let's go back in, and where's our let's go back to customize. Let's go to our connectors, and I'm going to disconnect this guy, and let's connect a new one. Okay, so here's the OAuth screen, and I'm just going to add my AI playground and grant access to just that guy. So now we're going to try it again. And okay, this is interesting. So I actually got more permissions. I wonder if when I connected my previous one, they've since added more, because now we're seeing more tools available to us. So now we're seeing everything. So that's kind of interesting. Either that or the documentation. Okay, yeah, I think this is just not up to date. So there's actually more tools available than is displayed here. I think that's what's going on. Okay, so now let's try this again. Let's do a new chat. And I'm going to use my voice to type faster. I want to interact with my Airtable environment. What bases do I have available to me? If you don't use Whisper for voice API, or there's others like it, I highly recommend it. It is nice to be able to just talk, and it does such a good job. Okay, so now we're going to ask it. I'm assuming it's going to ask for permission again. It's interesting. Maybe not. Maybe it respects the permissions I already gave it. That's interesting. Okay. It's not working. May not have any bases yet. Permission scope, the connected Airtable may not have the necessary permissions to list bases, or maybe scope to a specific workspace that's empty. I definitely gave it a base and authenticated. Okay, let's see. What are we doing here? And you also have the ability to always allow or block certain ones. So you can actually come through here and say never allow for this tool to run. But let's try this again. Let's see what's not working. Okay, so I'm going to playground, and I don't want to allow. No, we don't want to do that. Okay, so the scope should already be built into here. So Okay, it says we're connected. What is going on here? Let's see if we can try again. Yay, there we go. I don't know why it didn't work the first time, but we now have access. Okay. Can you list the pages available in the interfaces of this base? Okay, so let's see what it comes back. I want to test the interfaces. Okay, list interfaces and pages in a base. Yeah, we want to allow that. Let's see what we got. I do have interfaces, but they are not published, I don't believe. So we'll find out, see if we can find them if they're not published. Okay, it has one interface called interface, which contains, maybe that one is published. That's interesting. Okay, yeah, so here's my interface, and then podcast roundup. Let's just publish this second one and see if that's the reason why, if it only gives us published ones. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, now it shows two. So, okay, so it's published ones. It even tells you the fields, a slimmer view with fields. Both are backed by the same underlying. It tells you what table they're backed by. Would you like to explore? Records are available in roundup 2 page. Okay, so you see how it's inferring. So I didn't even give it the exact one, but I hopefully gave it enough context that it can figure out what page I'm referring to. And then based on just, what records, it's determining first, what tool to run. And so that's where the AI converts your natural text into the specific API call. Okay, so it tells us it has one record. And it gives us the information. So here's the title, the description, not set. It gives us the information. So those are the fields that I exposed into the interface. So those are the fields that I made available. And there is only one record here. So yeah, so let's see. What else can we ask? Okay. Okay, let's see how smart it is at creating a new table. I might give it a little more. What's the name of this table? Okay, let's see if it can create like a task table and link it to both of these. So you see here, you can modify the structure. So you can see if this is easier for a complex one with lots of fields. It might be easier to just use Claude. Now you could use Omni as well to do this, but you might prefer to just stay within your existing Claude environment and be able to modify. Okay, look, it already created it. Episode to-dos. So this might be faster. Let's see, okay, it created the link to the episode and the link to the team for assigned to. Very cool. All right, it did that. So there you can see. Now let's I remember I wrote before AI started to come out. I wanted to write actually I did create like scripts that would automatically populate your table with sample data. And now, ask for permission to create records. So now it should start populating this with tasks here in a second. But I remember I wrote a script that could do this, but now it's so much easier with AI. So there you go. We have our 10. So you can see you can just populate it with sample data and update that as you go. It even gives the summary here. And you're on your way. So you can see how you can use Claude MCP. So this works in any kind of environment that you're in. You can do it with Claude Code. You can do it with Codex, ChatGPT, whatever it is you're using. There's different ways that you can connect to it. But very, very cool stuff that is useful for your toolbox. So let me know how you're using MCP and working with your AI. We'd love to have you on as well if you've got some cool stuff to show. And that, I think, we'll wrap up today's show. We'll be back. The whole crew will be back next week, and we'll get an update on Camille with Airspace LA and everything else going on. So we will see you next time.